Salam.
Okay, so my name is Manira. This is Manira. We're from a group called Poetic Pilgrimage. Inshallah, we're going to share with you a little bit about our journey to Islam. We're going to also kind of perform a few of our poems for you today. I think the most important thing for me though, being here, isn't so much to kind of be here to like give a talk or anything like that. It's about connecting hearts. You know what I'm saying? It's about having a conversation. It's about having a dialogue. I know what it's like to be a convert and to be someone who, you know, you go through so many different experiences, like in this journey to Islam. So inshallah, like all we ask is just for your kind of attention, for your heart, for your time, so we can kind of.
Your ginger cake. Ginger cake.
It was her next to you.
All right. So.
As you can see, we haven't really prepared anything. It's really informal.
Alright, so we converted to Islam about 3 weeks before the 7/7 bombings. Our journey to Islam was really interesting because neither of us were interested in religion at all. Like, I think we both felt that we had ourselves, our identities were great, you know. We were kind of, like Manira had, like, I had really long dreadlocks. Manira had like a Mohican that was like dyed red. We were complete like rebels, but with absolutely no cause. We were just ready to like fight Babylon and fight the system. We didn't know what we were fighting for. We were just ready to fight. We were just rebels. I think Islam came really as an absolute shock. It was like, you know, like when people talk about being snatched, like when Allah like just literally is ready to kind of give you something. You just have no choice but to submit. I think that's how it was for us. Basically, with my own personal journey, the person who is now my husband, at this time he was my ex-boyfriend. So we had been boyfriend and girlfriend, we broke up. He decided to go to Gambia and he said he was going to find his roots. So I was like, okay, see you later. And he came back and he was like, I went to Gambia and I had a beautiful experience. I didn't realise that everyone in Gambia, or a majority of the people in Gambia, were Muslim. So he came back and he had dreadlocks at the time. He came back and he was like, he shaved his dreadlocks off and was like, I'm going to become a Muslim. And I was like, what the? I was like, what is wrong with you? You know, I was like, you've lost your culture. I was like, you're now like, you want to be Arab. You know, I was just so upset because I didn't understand like why he would leave his culture to embrace a religion that I assumed was nothing to do with us as African Caribbean people. And so he made that journey to Islam, and I was mad. I was angry, man. You know, I was really, really angry. And that was that. You know, we had a few arguments about his decision. I was real mad with him. Didn't speak to him again for ages. Then I was at university, and I had to do a book review. And I was doing a module called Black Radicalism. So it was about black radicals, basically. And my book review was on the autobiography of Malcolm X. And so I was reading this book, and I had read it before. I knew about Malcolm X. His whole history was well known to me. But for some reason, at the time, reading it, I think because my ex-boyfriend had just converted to Islam, Islam was kind of in the back of my mind. So I'm reading this book, and I'm thinking, wow, like, this is speaking to me, you know? Like, there was something about it that was really resonating with me, particularly the pilgrimage. And Manira and I had already developed our group, Poetic Pilgrimage, before. So the idea of a pilgrimage was like, I don't know, like it just really spoke to me because we always felt that we were on a journey to God, you know. And so when Malcolm X had made this pilgrimage, I was like, man, if I thought the pilgrimage was only for men, so I was like, man, if I was a Muslim man, I would love to go on this pilgrimage, you know. And it just started to change my heart. Like it was really strange. Because in my mind, I was angry with Islam because I felt that Islam had taken my ex-boyfriend away from me, you know. But my heart was like, wow, this is kind of special. So Manira and I were housemates, and I would go into her room and I'd be like, yo, Manira. Well, her name was Tanya at the time. So I was like, Tanya. But I used my nickname for her was just G. So I was like, G, I don't know what's happening to me with this religion. It's like, I don't know, I'm starting to feel like real positive feelings for Islam. and she would kind of just be like, okay, you know, like, her vibe was just like, just get out of my room. Like, she wasn't interested at all, and I'd go back, and I was like, it was the end of my degree, so, you know, when you're kind of procrastinating, I don't know what you guys were like when you studied, but I know my final few months of my degree, I procrastinate so much. So I'd start like, I was reading this book, and then when I completed it, I was like, wow, you know, everything I thought I knew about this religion, I kind of had it all wrong, and I felt that Islam deserved me to give it just a chance to know what exactly it was about. So that's when I started doing research, and came across various books, and then Manira and I would share my books with Manira, and I think you can take over from here.
Okay, I mean, okay, just to give you a bit of background about myself, like, I don't know why, like, my journey to Islam starts like 500 years before I was born or what have you. Like, just to give you a bit of background about myself. So my parents are from the Caribbean. My mom is very Caribbean, you know, if you look at women from the Caribbean, they tend to be, especially Jamaica, they tend to be very religious, you know. And like Christianity, the main religion there is Christianity. In fact, I don't know if it's still the case, but there was one point where Christianity, or there were more churches in Jamaica than anywhere else per square mile. That's a big thing. Exactly, for such a small island, you know. But the history of Jamaica is that people are very, very religious and very, very spiritual, you know. Like, but if you go back, like there was at the time that slavery happened, or that slavery was happening, and people coming to the island of Jamaica as enslaved people, there was African revivalism happening in West Africa, where you had different scholars and different, you know, sheikh, like just putting knowledge about Islam out there. And the main thing that they were sort of saying was like, you have one God and you are slave to God only. And in fact, this caused a lot of rebellions in the Caribbean at the time, you know. A lot of people were rebelling against being enslaved, but against the idea of having to call someone else master. Because as far as they were concerned, you know, like, Allah's their master, Allah's the only one who is, you know, they're a slave to. So, you know, in the part of Jamaica where my family are from, it's called St. Thomas, but it has a real rich history of like slave rebellion. And you can see remnants of Islam there, you know. There's one part of St. Thomas called Yalis, but it's actually spelled Ya Allah, you know. You go there and you see little things. I believe that in the British Museum they have like a handwritten Quran which was found in Jamaica. So you have this rich history of like Islam in Jamaica. Anyway, hundreds of years later on, my parents came over to the Caribbean. They from the Caribbean. They met, got together, had 2 sons. Well, had 4 children altogether. I'm the youngest, the only girl. So I'm the only girl, right, amongst these boys, and like these boys are all rough, and I'm a bit rough. I'm a bit of a tomboy or what have you, and I'm also very like, you know, I don't know, for all the mothers, you know, when you've got a girl and she's in a mix of all these boys, this girl's like, why have I got to do this? Why have I got to wear a dress? Why have I got to wear a ribbon? So I was very much, why have I got to go to Sunday school, you know? Because if you're from the Caribbean, in the city where I'm from, in Bristol, you go to church every single Sunday. This blue or white van will come and pick you up, you go to church, and then you sing songs about Jesus, about God. And I was like, well, why is Jesus, you know, portrayed as a white man? And he got blue eyes. I know he's not Jamaican, but surely he wouldn't be that pale, you know? I'll be like, why is Jesus the Son and God and the Holy Spirit? But, you know, Jesus prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane to himself. I didn't understand this. I had all these questions. And then, you know, you'll see things like where people will come into church and people will be talking about them. Look what she's wearing. She's not wearing a hat. Because if you go back to my grandmother's church, in her hat, all the women had to cover their head. You know, the first person I've seen covering their head was my grandma. No man outside of her family has seen her head, you know. But anyway, so I used to say to myself, why is this person talking about that person? If this is the religion that I'm supposed to follow, I don't like it. So at about the age of 14, I consciously was like, Mom, I'm not a Christian anymore, you know. My mom was angry and everything, still forced me to go to church. But it left me on the path where I was just questioning, you know. I started to find out more about myself, you know, in terms of my identity, my blackness. I thought the salvation of my soul maybe lied in my blackness. And then just being like, I don't know, just feeling really angry instead of being uplifted and lighthearted, you know. I was just like, okay, you know, the kind of around the time where I met Sakina, I was like, I didn't really need religion, I believe in God, excuse me, I pray, all these different sorts of things. Religion's not for me. You know, I'll praise God in the way however I want, you know. And that manifested in me praying and making libation with some rum and thinking that this was some form of spirituality or something, like all these different things. Anyway, moving forward to when we was in university, as Sakina mentioned, like, we were like girls that were quite confident and comfortable in who we were, you know. Like, I thought I found myself. I thought I was the epitome of being a strong woman, you know. And for me, in my eyes, like, the idea of Islam and the idea of women, like frail women, you know, who just have nothing to offer and who are just like suppressed by their men, it just didn't interest me at all. So when Sakina was like, oh, you know, Munira, well, not quite Munira, not Tanya, oh gee, you know, I didn't know why I'm feeling these things in my heart. It was kind of a little bit, maybe not quite like that. Okay, a little bit not like that. But she would come to me and I'd be like, okay. And she would say, you know, in Islam it says to pray to God. I pray to God anyway, you know. She's like, in Islam it says to fast. For some strange reason, Sakina and I fasted for many years, like during Ramadan, prior to being Muslims. Yeah, about 4 years, you know. Like all these different things that Islam taught. We did it anyway, you know. But I was like, well, you don't really need a religion to tell you to be like that. You just need to do it, you know. And then like Sakina would bring, as she said, many books to me. Yeah, gee. No, she'd be like, gee, like, look at this, you know. It talks about the oneness of God, and the oneness of God appealed to me so much because, you know, I rejected it when I was Christian, you know. But it appealed to me, but still, I was like, I'm a woman. This is not a religion for me. And then she gave me several books to read, and then there was one particular book by Fatima Manisi. Now, this woman for me is an absolute G. She's just like, because she, you know, doesn't look like a typical Muslim woman, you know? She doesn't wear hijab, she's outspoken, she will criticize her community as needs be, you know? She speaks out. So probably where she lives, a lot of people probably don't really like her. A lot of people, especially Muslims, probably look down at her. But when I read her book, and, you know, she was talking about the fact that women, the rights that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, gave to women, you know? And she would say, but there's a problem in how, in some cultures, that gets portrayed, you know? People would like take parts of hadiths, people would take parts of Quran to suit them, mix and match, and then use it as a form of like suppression for women. And now I don't necessarily think that's the case across the board, but at that time I needed to hear that because I quite clearly saw some women were being, you know, abused by what I thought was Islam, you know. And I was thinking, this woman is saying that the Prophet, who she believes in, who she follows, taught something completely different. Now, people in her community, they quite clearly, a lot of them don't like her, but she doesn't care because she wants to know about truth, but she's just talking about the truth, you know? And as Muslims, just the idea of talking about truth, regardless of what your community may say, regardless of what those who don't, you know, who are not your community may say, it appealed to me so much. And I was like, I kind of want to become a Muslim. But it was my ego, it was my pride. I was thinking, Sakina wants to be a Muslim, I'm not being a Muslim. Like, you know, sort of thing. But then afterwards, I sort of like just expressed to Sakina that I want to become a Muslim, and then we took our Shahada in a beautiful circle similar to this, you know, subhanAllah, it's very, very similar to this. And that was that really. 3 weeks later, 7 bombings. Don't know why, but that, yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of more or less our journey. That was kind of more or less how we embraced Islam. But I think, like, from that point until now, we've gone through so many different experiences, and I think because of the fact that we're performers and we were performers before we converted to Islam, almost immediately we were like, people that knew that we were performers were like, we need your voice, kind of thing. And we literally just became performers almost after like maybe 6 months of being Muslim, we became Muslim performers. And it was like, we were kind of thrust into this kind of place. We had these experiences that I think we were probably not even ready for at the time. So what we're going to talk about now is how our families responded to it.
Yeah.
Yeah? You might as well talk because your family's response was a bit more dramatic.
Okay. So I told you my mum is Christian. My dad, he believes in God, but he's not Christian. He's just like he feels that there's too much hypocrisy in organized religion. So my mum would say, like, his name's Rennie, my mother's name is Dorette. My mum would say to my father, Rennie, you know, you're going to hell, you know. You're going to go to hell. God doesn't like you, you know. You need to come to Christianity, you know. My mum is a deacon in the church, and she's probably one of my biggest spiritual role models. Not that I follow the same path of her, but her commitment to God, her commitment to her community and to people. She gives to the poor, you know. She works with like street workers, you know, like she does so many homeless projects and all these different things. But when I came to Islam, despite the fact that before I was this like red punk hair, short skirt, angry black girl, you know, for her still Islam was like the biggest threat. It was the biggest problem she had like encountered with any of her children. And believe like my brothers, they're not angels, you know, but for her Islam was the biggest problem. And I don't know for what reason, you know, it was, but like at that time I finished university and I went back to live with my parents. And you know when you have that zeal of being Muslim, you just converted and you have that zeal, or you know you just found your faith again, you have that zeal. So, you know, my mum would say, why you got to wear that turban on your head? I'll be like, Mary wore a turban on her head. She was like, why have you got to pray so much? I was like, God wants us to pray. Why do you only pray once a day? You know, like all these different arguments, like, why you got to go to a mosque on Fridays? It's like, who told you to go to church on Sundays? It was just this big argument. But then I left home and like, alhamdulillah, you know, when I came back, my mother dismissed me so much. I'm her only daughter. She would go to Tesco's and she would say, this is my baby girl. And the woman in the checkout would say, she's not a baby anymore, you know. But like, I'm her youngest daughter. So now I think she sees that I'm growing up. But it was very difficult, even for like my uncles as well, you know. As far as they was concerned, yeah, their niece converted to this religion. But it's only now some of their friends converted to Islam. So now they call me up, Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam, Uncle Clifton. You know? But alhamdulillah, my mum's much better with it. And I think for me, the most important thing was just loving my mother even more. Just like trying to just show her so much love. Like send her cards on Mother's Day. You know, like anytime I have like, even though I did that before, but now I'm always quoting big scriptures of Quran and just like, you know, just trying to show her how much I love her. And it's not even because I'm a Muslim, I need to show my mum that I love her, but I just love her more because I am a Muslim, if that makes sense. I don't know if that even makes sense, but so my mum's still trying to get me married off to people in her church, but she's relatively okay with it now. She's relatively okay with it. What about your family?
My family, alhamdulillah, I've got no complaints. My family were really cool because when my parents were my age, the age that I was when I converted to Islam, they converted to Rastafarianism. So they had changed from their parents' religion of Christianity to become, you know, Rasta rebels, so to speak. So I think for me, my parents couldn't really, you know, have an issue with me making my own spiritual decision because they had also made their own spiritual decisions. I think for my mum, because I've always been very artistic and very creative, I think she was a bit afraid that I would lose that I would lose myself and not be the same person. I wouldn't be a performer anymore. So I think that was quite difficult for her. And also, we converted to Islam in the summer, and we decided straight away that we wanted to wear hijab. So I think for a lot of people, like they'd be like, oh, I seen them two girls wrap up in the, you know, when they'd be like, I seen them wrapped up in all this cloth in the summertime, what's wrong with them? And the word would get back to our family, you know. And my mum would be like, why do you have to wear so much cloth, you know? Can you just bring it down a little bit, you know, even though we were trying to be funky, you know, we were trying to style it out a little bit with hijab and a baseball cap or something, but, you know, it was still, you know, it was just difficult, you know. And I think gradually, what I found with my family was just about being myself, you know, like when I'm at home, not trying to be like, Salam alaikum, mum, you know, and just trying to act like overly over the top. When I'm at home, I'm my mother's daughter, do you know what I mean? And I think she really appreciated that. My father, I wasn't raised with my father, but I have a very good relationship with him. And I think for him, his main concern, he didn't actually have a concern about Islam. He actually had a big respect for Islam. He was like, you know, he recognized the fact that Islam is very good for discipline and all those different things. I think his main thing was just to make sure that I, as a woman, got my rights and I wasn't oppressed. So, alhamdulillah, I was quite fortunate. My baby brother converted to Islam maybe like 3 years ago, alhamdulillah. As did my cousin and my uncle. So I've got a lot of members of my family that are also Muslim too, alhamdulillah. So yeah, so I think my experience with my family, it wasn't so bad at all. I mean, my mum, that when it was my birthday, my 30th birthday, my mum got me a birthday cake made, and on it said, Eid Milad Saeed or something like that. And I was like, go mom. Like she really, like when my mum's really on me always to go to the doctors. She was always like, go to your local GP, and I'm like, I will, but I prefer herbal medicine. So it's for her to coerce me to go to the local GP. She sent me this quote from she found a hadith, and it was like, paradise is at the feet of your mother, blah blah blah. And I was like, what? And then she was like, therefore I'm your mother, and I'm telling you to go to the GP, so go. And like she proper quoted the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So I was like, okay, I'll go, And like even like every year when it's my birthday, my mum likes to make me like homemade cards. So she'd like always get like kind of Islamic geometric patterns, and what I mean, like she really tries to kind of reach me where I am. And so for that, like I'm eternally grateful, The funniest thing, I think your parents do this as well. I think it might be a Jamaican thing, but I don't think our parents realize that like the meat that we eat is called halal. So my mum would say, oh, I've got some halal chicken. She'll be like, I've got some Allah chicken for you. Yeah, mum, it's halal. She's like, that's what I said, Allah chicken. I'm like, but yeah, so alhamdulillah, I think both of our experiences were kind of different, but I think I think how we both try to approach our families is just by kind of approaching them with love, kind of thing, and just kind of being ourselves. I think the next thing we want to talk about is like how it was for us culturally, because before we converted to Islam, we were both we still are, but before we were very proud Jamaican women. Like,
can I just say something? Sakina had this big old Jamaican flag flying outside her bedroom window in a rented house, in rent accommodation. And she came to me one day and she was saying, whenever I hear the flag flying, I just feel so proud of my country.
I basically got one of those big flags and I had it like drilled outside my house. Like I got a big drill, I tied it to like a flagpole and I drilled it outside my house, and it was literally like that. Sometimes I see the flag flying in the wind and I just want to like sing the national anthem or something. But I think, when for people of African Caribbean descent, a lot of us kind of experience this idea that we don't know where our roots are, we don't really know where we come from really. Like we have an idea that we're probably from West Africa, but because our ancestors were taken as slaves, sometimes some of us try to overcompensate by being like particularly overly kind of like pro-Africa and overly pro-black. And I think that when we before we embraced Islam, we were very much like that, And I think coming to Islam, it kind of completely changed our identities and our ideas of how we approach this idea of like race, particularly because Allah doesn't distinguish races, everyone is equal before Allah. But I think what was important for us was for us to maintain our cultural identity, because I think sometimes you can convert to Islam and people will say things like, oh, I remember someone on Facebook was like, sisters, you should learn Urdu, because we'd be complaining like, we don't understand what's happening in the mosque, and I'd be like, well, you should learn Urdu, and I'm like, surely we should at least try and learn Arabic first, what I'm saying, A, but B, surely the mosques in England should be in English, and it was sort of like we'd have all these kind of conflicts. Like I remember when we first converted to Islam, we went to a mosque in my local area, and they're not used to having women in the mosque. So we were there for Jum'ah, and we were like reading Quran, and then all of a sudden it just went real quiet, and we were like, where are all the people gone? And then we went downstairs,
because there were no
women there anyway. We were the only women there. Went downstairs, and the doors were locked. Like we were literally locked in the mosque because they were so not used to having females in the mosque that they didn't even think to come upstairs and check to see whether or not there were any women. So we were literally locked in the mosque from like the Dhuhr to Asr time
in summer.
In the summer, and it was across the road from my mum's house. So I'd just be looking out like, Mum, save me. Like it was just, alhamdulillah, it was a blessed place to be locked in. Apart from the fact that the day before, the man in the mosque was showing me around, and he was like, this is where we do the janazah, this is where we clean the bodies, this is where we keep the bodies, and I'm like, Allah, like, I don't have any dead bodies here, But like, it was a lot of difficulties, like sometimes going into different mosques that were predominantly like Pakistani mosques, people kind of staring at you. Like we go to the mosque for literally for like every Jum'ah, and people would just stare at us as though we were like aliens. And then eventually, like 6 weeks later, they'd be like, oh, assalamu alaikum, where are you from, and what's your background? And they were really nice when they found out we converted, but that alienation for the first, few months of just being stared at, like by like, mashallah, like about 40 aunties just staring, you know? And you're just like, hi. You already feel different, you know? Things like that were very difficult. Or like when I converted, how many of you have been to London before? Yeah, you guys are all familiar with London. Like when we converted to Islam, people would say to us, like we'd be in like the main mosque in London, and they say, why don't you go to Brixton Mosque? That's where all the black people are, you know? You'll be okay there. And we're like, we don't want to go to Brixton. We don't go to Brixton anyway, let alone, you know. So, you know, all these things were quite difficult, but I think we made a conscious decision that we had to really strike this balance between Islam and our identity and our culture, because, you know, I met a lot of Jamaican people that were almost like embarrassed about their culture because they were not from a Jamaican background. For me, I have no shame in where I come from. I have no shame in, like, you know, the life that we led before. Everything brought us to where we are today, you know, and I have no shame in my culture at all, but I know that there are certain elements of my culture that don't reflect who I am, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like about striking that balance, and I think we spent a long time trying to do that. It was really difficult, but at the same time, I think eventually we just found our balance. Yeah? Anything you want to say?
Okay, so you cover that.
Alright, so we're going to talk about one more little subheading, and then we're going to do a few poems for you, inshallah. And I think that the next one we're going to talk about is our experiences being artists. Because as I mentioned before, when we converted to Islam, before we converted to Islam, we met a brother called Ismail from Mecca to Medina. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mecca to Medina. And as soon as he found out that he knew us before, he'd seen us perform in the past, when he found out that we converted to Islam, it was around the time that there was this kind of new Muslim hip-hop scene that was emerging. So I think they were very happy. They were like, whoa, those two sisters, yeah, I've seen them before, now they're Muslim, you know? Yeah, like it was like, they were really excited about our presence. So I think almost immediately, before we even really knew, you know, the four pulls, we were on stage, you know, representing a particular voice. And I think what was also interesting was the fact that 7/7 happened. And so there was this kind of media gaze on Muslims. And because we were vocal with our expressions of Islam and the hardships that we were experiencing, suddenly we became this kind of voice. And it was like, we didn't even know what we were a voice for or how we were even a voice. But I suppose in a way we kind of represented both worlds. We represented being British, you know, British women who were just from the West, but then we also represented, in a way, Islam. And so we kind of were given a platform very quickly, which was interesting, because I think for us as artists, we had never really experienced any hardships from anyone. Like, our message was always very positive. We always had empowering things to say. So the communities that we had performed to before Islam always supported us. They loved what we were doing because we had good things to say. When we converted to Islam, there was this whole, you know, centuries-old dialogue about women on stage and women not on stage. Music being haram or music not being haram. Like this whole debate that we kind of were just in the middle of, and we didn't even really know what we were kind of up against, but we kind of, in some cases, we were almost, I don't mean this in a negative way, but sometimes we were used in a way, because it was like when certain organizations wanted to present to the local government that Muslims were tolerant and, you know, progressive, they'd be like, look, we've got these two Muslim girls, and they'd just like throw us on stage and we'd be performing, and like half of the crowd are just like, they look like they just want to kill us, man. They're just angry, you know. But it was almost like a way in which people were I felt like we were a bit of a scapegoat in some cases for people presenting this kind of new face of Islam. And sometimes, because we come from like underground hip hop, we come from a background of music where we just say whatever we want to say. So we were, and so we'd be on stage and like you can talk about the Muslim award thing that we did, which is hilarious. But like we'd be on stage and like it almost felt as though the organizers were too scared to say the things that they really wanted to say. So they would put us on stage and be like, and stand back, you know, it's almost like waiting
and then walk away.
Yeah, waiting for fireworks to happen. But I want Manira to tell you a little bit, to tell you a few stories.
No, I was just once, the story that she's talking about, we was asked before for the Muslim News Awards. So Muslim News Awards is like this really like sort of prestigious event, like in a really fancy hotel, you know. And then you had half of the audience were like politicians like Boris Johnson was there, David Miliband was there, like all these different politicians were there, and the other half were these Muslims. But you know the Muslims who are like, yeah, we are rather civilized, sort of like those
Baroness, like,
yeah, exactly, you know, all these different people. So we was told to perform. We did 2 sets, one hip hop set with a live band and one poetry set. So in our hip hop set, like
Poetry was first.
we did the poetry set. I don't know what was wrong with me, yeah, but we did a poetry set, and at that time we was talking about what we were going through as Muslim women and just as Muslims in general, and how people would just look at us on the streets like we were actually, you know, trash. People would say so many different things, so many disrespectful things. We talked about various different things about the response from our family. So we said this, and we was quite critical of British society at that time. So all the politicians were like, what are they talking about? Why are they saying this? And you know, we was like, okay, so the politicians hate us. Don't worry, maybe we could win them back with a music set. So then we do a music set with live band. You know, we've got some rastas in our band, and then like I'm like at the beginning like, David Miliband, stop cluster bombings, you know, like all these different things. And then the Muslims are like, what are these? Their faces literally like, what are they doing? And you just saw people turning away, you know? So it was like, great. The other half don't like us either, you know? So, but like, yeah, in terms of like being artists, we face so many like, from our, as Sakina said, from our community, so many negative things. At the same time, like we really had a lot of support, you know, and a lot of support from scholars particularly. You know, like the first time we performed was, one of the first times we performed was at a Maulid, and we had like, it was in Wembley Conference Centre, and literally the front row was just like filled with like shook, you know, just filled. And then people came up, and you know, people from Yemen, people from Mauritania, everywhere around the world, and people came up, and everyone made dua for us at the end. We're like, you know, these girls, if what they're speaking is the truth, then you need to make dua for them all, you know, you need to support them in what they're doing, you know. We performed at another event around the time when you had the Danish cartoonists, you know, drawing those negative pictures of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But like, as well, we had like, you know, a sheikh, one of the Hubayb, and he was like, you know, praising us, like, you know, for what we were saying, but it was just all from the heart, you know. So we never had we understand that there's debates and there's, you know, people agree, people disagree, but we also had scholars who were supporting us every step of the way. So people will email us and say, you're going to the hellfire, you're going to burn, you're in misguidance. But like, we always felt comfortable in our Islam. We always felt comfortable, we was always grounded. We always had people to speak to, you know. And as a result of being performers as well, alhamdulillah, like, we got to meet Muslims in different countries, you know, hear different stories, different plights, you know. We got to meet different scholars, we got to meet different activists, and like just come together with many progressive communities. So really, it's just been all a blessing, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
That's what I'd say.
I think that's it.
Correct.
Yes.